Welcome to Four Chairs. Nice to see you all. We will start by reviewing the rules of the EPIC system, which is 1, to be honest, 2 is to listen, not wait to speak, 3 is to commit to the conversation, and 4 is to actively try and shift chairs as someone else is speaking. Do you all agree to these?
Yes.
Great. The topic for today's conversation is, what do Black people want? And when I write that topic, knowing that there's not one answer, which is why this is a conversation. I'm watching what's happening and unfolding, and I'm seeing people who were on board for what was starting and then got turned off, or were there and don't know what's happening, or seeing that the demands keep changing, or what BLM wants is not what they think is appropriate. So there's a lot of voices right now, and the longer it's in the news, the more there's a chance that the message gets hijacked, adjusted, overrun. So what I wanted to do is have a conversation with the three of you, knowing that possibly the only thing you may have in common is that you're Black. You're all three very different people with very different experiences, to have a conversation. What do Black people want from this moment? And I know that that may not be a specific answer, but I would like to open up the conversation to that. The first step of EPIC is equalization. So the first question I'm going to ask you has nothing to do with the topic. I would like to know from each of you, who was your very first celebrity crush? Your very, very first celebrity crush growing up. I will go first, and I will admit mine was Ricky Schroeder on Silver Spoons. Now, I'm not proud of it. I think he rebranded himself as Rick Schroeder later, but he was on Silver Spoons, and there was this handsome, white, good-looking, wealthy guy who had a train that went around his living room, and I was like, this is the perfect human being, and I had a lot of love for Rick Schroeder. So that's mine. Okay, Sean, I hope you embarrass yourself as much.
I mean, it was Kelly Kapowski from Saved by the Bell. I don't.
See a theme.
I mean,
okay, why?
That's what you got. That's what you saw on Saturday morning cartoons, and that's Saved by the Bell was awesome. So it was like, and she was the hot. She was she was a girl, so she was the hot one. And it's like Kelly Kapowski. Lisa Turtle was cool, but
So if girl and hot, then they were interested.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay, Michelle.
Same show. It was Zach Morris.
Seriously?
He's like a theme.
Seriously, Saved by the Bell too?
Yes. He was a little rebel.
Did you like rebellious people?
Yeah.
Mm.
He was the character. So yep. Zach Morris. But after Zach was definitely Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Will Smith, all day. I think I still have a crush on him. So yeah.
We have 2 Saved by the Bells. Okay, Will, is yours Saved by the Bell as well?
Absolutely not. But I did like Saved by the Bell. It might just be because I think mine's a little bit older, since you said the first. And it was Rudy Huxtable.
Yes.
Wow.
Most definitely my first crush.
Well, how old was she when you first crushed on Rudy Huxtable?
She was about the same age as me, Riaz. Don't try.
Okay, no, I wasn't
like
trying to.
pedophile.
No. I didn't know where you were. Okay, no, I could see that. And what was it about Rudy?
I mean, back then, does anything really make sense? Like, she was a cute girl on the Cosby Show.
At least mine had a train. Mine had a train that went around the house. Like, aside from being cute, I was like, there's a train. That's awesome. Let me start by asking you guys, and I'll start with Michelle. What has this experience of the past few weeks been like for you?
Well, me personally, it's actually been kind of a roller coaster because, I mean, as you know, I've kind of been MIA, even within our group. Just, I think so much has happened. And to be honest, like, I had to turn everything off. So unless I got a text message, like, I wasn't aware of the another case with Rashard. I was just totally out of the loop, and I felt like I needed to disconnect you know, on top of my own son just going to the military and just everything else. It's been a lot, you know, and the great thing about it though, I want to say is I do see more people having conversations. But then the other end of the spectrum is you're seeing almost where people are kind of, you know, going to their sides. And that's the part where it's like, oh, how do we, you know, have something that, you know, affected all of our lives, you know, in a moment where we knew like, okay, there was this big injustice, we're all on the same page, and then we kind of go to our corners. So it's been it's actually been overwhelming. I don't think I thought it was going to get to me personally so much, but I mean, it really did. It really did. So I have completely disconnected for the time being, just as a breather. And I mean, you know, I still have, you know, two teenagers that are seeing everything that's happening, and it's a lot to process. It's a lot.
Sean, for you?
Same. I think everything is just overstimulating right now. I've done the same thing. I've pretty much cut back on everything because instead of seeing everybody coming together, you're seeing this bigger divide happening because everybody's trying to push their agenda. So I think I'm just turned off. I'm turned off by it completely because there's nothing you can say right now is going to change anybody else's opinion. And if you are changing people's opinion, it's not like they're doing it willfully. They're just doing it because they want to be part of something, or they're just saying it just to be cool or hip. I think it's not. I don't think everything's being genuine right now, and I think we're getting lost in trying to pick a side or agreeing with something. So it's just a weird spot. Like my wife just literally quit Facebook because every day it's somebody's argument. Somebody's arguing about something or somebody's beliefs. You know, the thing that happened with the NASCAR driver is an example. You know, it was a mistake and it should have brought people together. But instead of doing that, now people are still again picking their sides. They're like, look at you guys, you guys, you know, on the left went so hard and you guys are just picking a side. And it's just, instead of coming together and saying, hey, let's be united, it's bringing more divide. So I think it's the same thing, it's pulling back from everything because it's just beating my head down.
William?
I've actually become more engaged. Partially, I think because of what both of you said. In general, from the beginning and now, I feel like it's a moment that is not gonna come easy. You know, this isn't the first time where we've had some kind of traction, and then, you know, after a while, it dies down, and it dies down because, like Sean said, there are a lot of people that, you know, are just excited about getting behind the thing that'll make them look good, but aren't really completely committed. And there are also people on the other side that want to find any kind of way they can to push back to basically silence a lot of people. But in the middle of that, I think there's a lot of genuine people that are trying to understand more, that want to get behind the change that we're trying to make. I think that definitely still exists, but the closer we get to it, the harder the pushback's going to be. So it's not easy because there's only so many hours in a day, but I'm going to engage more and more, jumping in conversations and sharing whatever information I can, talking to people that want to listen, and, you know, just recognizing that I'm more comfortable in this setting than a lot of people are. Like, it's hard, it's tiring, you know, I get it. And I'd rather step up and be that person on this platform while somebody else is going out and marching every day, you know. Thank you for all the people that are doing that. That's not really what my place is in this moment. I think this is, so, you know, I'm trying to power through.
So for people, let's say, because we've had a bunch of conversations, all of you have been involved in Four Chairs conversations. I'm curious actually how they felt for you. Well, just quickly, how did it feel for you, Sean, your Four Chairs conversation?
I think it was great. I think sitting down with the police officer with that experience of 26 years and seeing what community he came from and seeing what his ideology is and seeing how he tried to make an effect on the police force or people that he engaged with throughout his career, I think that was a good eye-opening experience. And I think, you know, with Sonia as well, seeing her side and understanding how she grew up and why her beliefs are what her beliefs are. I think it was just, again, the conversation was great to see all that happen. Yeah.
Michelle, you?
Yeah, same. You know, it's so funny because I don't know if it's just how maybe we're I've been raised, it's so diverse, and I have so many different type of friends from all cultures. I think the most eye-opening thing for me is, and common sense as well, but to actually meet somebody that just didn't have experience with other cultures. They didn't see Black people every day. They're all somewhere else. So for them to like almost be like, wow, okay, I know there's some issues. I didn't really know it was that much, but at the same time realizing it's because they don't even have that interaction. So I can't be upset and blame them, but I can make them aware. I can, encourage them to do their research, and we can have these open conversations. So I've been a little less, I haven't been so raw. I've been more like, even myself, let me listen and really understand what you're saying here or what you're trying to understand. Because maybe you just haven't interacted with different cultures and really know. So that was a really big eye-opening thing for me with my 4 Chairs experience.
Okay. And William?
Yeah, I thought they were great. Both the ones I participated in and the ones that you all participated in, because I definitely watched all of them, and I took a lot from each one. I think people coming together for different backgrounds to talk about anything is amazing, and even if we don't all agree in the end, I do feel like we end up being closer, and we realize that what we're asking for isn't that far apart. And so I definitely got that out of both of the ones I participated in. And the one thing I like the most about just this format is, as I said, I'll talk to anybody about any of this stuff. And, you'll run into people that are purposely trying to distract from what's going on or just want to troll or whatever. So it becomes very frustrating, especially when you're trying to explain something, sincerely, and then you realize that that's not what they're there for. So knowing that these people are put in this place with us because they want to hear what you have to say, because they want to understand, and because they also want to share, their background and ask their questions without feeling like they need to filter it so that it doesn't turn into an argument.
Mm-hmm.
I just feel like that's a great way to talk about, serious, controversial issues.
Yeah, great. You were talking, William, about traction. As every time we try it, we get some traction, then it'll get more difficult. There'll be more naysayers. Traction for what? Knowing each of you will have a different opinion on this, what do you want from this moment? If to people who are listening and saying, okay, I'm paused, I know there's something important going on, but I'm hearing a million voices telling me what they want. Some are reasonable, some are ridiculous. What is it you want from this? What is it you're hoping from this moment?
I don't know. I think I understand that progress takes time in general. So I do try to temper my expectations. The main movement definitely started around police brutality. And I feel like there has been traction in terms of that. We've seen some states that have made some moves. Obviously, there's some pushback now federally in different areas, but I feel like that's the most important thing. And I feel like if that's where it ended, actually did get some things to change, then that would be huge. But we've also seen that in this movement, with everyone going out and hitting the streets in the country and the world, that has gone beyond that. We're seeing companies that are taking a closer look at their policies and how they can change. We're getting emails from everywhere we shop so that they make sure that we know that they're behind us. And I think that's amazing. And it would be great if we do have an entire change in how we view race in this country. I think it might be a little optimistic to say that we're gonna literally change how everyone views race in this country right now in this moment. But I'm on board to push it as far as we can go.
And in terms of the reforms that you've heard about or seen on policing, specifically as it applies to police brutality, what have you guys seen that you feel good about? What are the concrete changes that you feel good about? What are the ideas that are being brought up that you feel like, yep, that's a step in the right direction? Any specifics from the three of you of things that you're seeing that you're like, that's great, that's exactly what we need?
I'm all about the actions. Yeah, I mean, like Will said, it's going to take, I mean, it's still happening, you know, and this isn't something new. So it is definitely going to take time. I, you know, just even here locally in Dallas, you know, seeing that the police, and, you know, we've had our issues already when it comes to police brutality, shootings, all sorts of things. But just seeing, you know, even, you know, the person, what is it, the chief of police, you know, she's a Black woman. And it's already challenging enough for her when she has a whole staff of men that she's got to deal with on top of what's happening, you know, and they're trying to get in front of things. I'm noticing, you know, even lately, like I'll go to the store and I live in Dallas, and, you know, you'll see an officer and they're like, you know, good afternoon, ma'am. I'm like, okay, is that just something new? Like, you almost get weirded out. You're like, why you talking to me? What? I know my sticker's out, but come on now. Everything's been closed. But, you know, I'm noticing those things, you know, that they are
gestures
that they're trying to do. I mean, it's going to be a whole world of things that they need to do, but it's just like, okay, you know, I can't knock them for not doing something. You know, they went and protested with some of, you know, the protesters, you know, they took a knee, they're doing the things, you know, and whether it's for TV cameras, whatever, I mean, at the end of the day, we got to start somewhere. So, I mean, I'm seeing just little things like that locally within our police force, just the interactions that I personally have here in Dallas. So,
Sean, anything from you that you were seeing that you like, that's what's going on?
Just, I mean, even President Trump coming out and having a small little reform, it's not the greatest thing, but it's still something. It's a step in the right direction. I think accountability is what's I think it's standing out to me more, is like, okay, people are going to start being held more accountable for their actions instead of it just being overshadowed or overlooked. And even if if you're not a Trump fan, even the smaller reform he's doing is a step in the right direction. And it's, hey, let's just go along and see where it goes. And again, keep that momentum going. It's not going to change the world. It's not going to change overnight. I mean, it's, you know, since 1967 when segregation ended. So it's like, what's really going to happen? You know, it's going to take a longer time for it to keep progressing to that point where we're like, okay, not a lot of racism's happening around.
What specific are you talking about with Trump? Because it's amazing to me, anything good that Trump does never really makes it to left media.
He came out with something a few days ago with the police reform. It was a small initiative. I don't remember exactly what it was. I was just trying to Google it. Yeah. But I know it was a big deal because, of course, it's, like you said, it's something that's overlooked because if it's something positive that Trump does, nobody's going to really hear about it because you just want to keep attacking.
He paired with Senator Scott's initiative. It's basically what the GOP is proposing right now. It is most definitely a baby step, but I agree optics matter. So if what's going on now is big enough that he felt the need to say or do anything, is definitely a step in the right direction.
I know that I think the governor of Texas here, they're also trying to implement something, what was it called, the George Floyd, it was to keep the police accountable again. So like the excessive force and things like that, they're actually, I think we were the first state to trying to come up with something where it's like, no, because police are kind of in their own little protected, you know, bubble. They do something. It's not the same as if me or you did something. So I've seen some things about that as well. So like I said, they're
baby steps.
But you know, it's something.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's talk, because this is now where I think a lot of people are jumping off the bandwagon or allowing it to confuse them, is statues. You know, I think, you know, William, you were part of a conversation about statues, but in terms of sort of revising history, this is something that I get a lot from people. Like, they can't change history, they can't change history. How do you feel about these statues coming down? You can be specific about which ones you do, which ones you don't, but how do you feel about that?
I can speak on it if you want. You know, we had a discussion on it before, but since then, you know, some more have been challenged or come down. So just in general, the Confederate statues should go. In my opinion, they really should have never been put up. I won't, you know, go into all the details about, you know, when they were put up. It's clear that they were meant more to promote white supremacy than actually celebrate the Confederacy, which even if they were to celebrate the Confederacy, they lost the war. So those are kind of silly. But they tore down Grant's statue. which makes zero sense. It's the exact opposite of what anyone that wants to tear down a statue should be focused on. The challenges to George Washington or just anybody who ever owned slaves, I think that's a little short-sighted as well. I don't think it's the same thing, because we're not honoring them for being slave owners. If that was the reason that a statue was put up, then I would agree. But we honor George Washington because he was our first president. I think it's Thomas Roosevelt statue in New York. I think that one's okay, but I feel like they're going about it the right way. His family spoke up and said that they think it should be removed. The rationale is because he's on a horse and he's above a Native American and an African. And the discussion around it, brings some logic, and then the city will probably decide to tear it down. The problem is with the mob mentality, and you're just ripping down anything. You don't even know what you're ripping down. And I'm positive that's how Grant's statue got ripped down. So I'm not a big fan of that. And I also think that it definitely fuels fire for those that want to defend the statues. But at the same time, if these cities and states and the federal government can come together and then make decisions on these statues and give us rationale for why one will get taken down, one will be moved, one will not, then I don't think the mobs will go attacking every statue out there and just defacing it.
But I guess the question is, it's so hard to reason with a mob. It's very hard.
Well, that's why you have to get in front of them.
Yeah, and even if you do that, it might not work. I guess to me that the movement and the momentum and the goodwill being hijacked by an insane mob is what I'm most concerned about. What I would like to ask also is, I look at the statues as a symptom of being honest about our history. What I found interesting is, until this sort of movement, things like Black Wall Street, Tulsa riots, were not known. And I don't mean by white people. I mean, literally, someone texted me yesterday and said, a black guy said, I was a Black Studies major in college, and I never heard about Tulsa or Black Wall Street. And he's like, so the statues, controversial as they are, I think is an opening gambit for addressing sort of, what is the story? What is the education? What lessons do we need to teach? Can you guys talk a bit about that? What you would like to see changed in curriculums, in history lessons, things that are not being taught? What is it that you would like to see concretely, rather than just take down statues of things you disagree with? What is it you'd like to see?
And go ahead,
John. Growing up on the East Coast, New York City, I always had this talk with Erin. We didn't grow up with like Texas school history. So I know in Texas they have to know their Texas history. We didn't know that. We learned U.S. history, but along with U.S. history, I didn't know about Black Wall Street until I started working with Glenn Beck. Like, he did the story, and he's like, hey, have you ever heard of Black Wall Street? I was like, no, what are you talking about? And he broke the story down. I was like, that's unreal. And then from that, it led me to opening, like, what else happened in history that I don't know about? And I learned about the East St. Louis riots. Like, that's another thing that, happened in 1917 that nobody talks about, where it's like, they literally slaughtered over 200, 300 Black people. They're not sure about the numbers, but they just went in, and a mob mentality went in and just killed a bunch of Black people. You need to talk about that history, because you learn about World War II, you learn about the Great Depression, but talk about the Black Wall Street. Talk about the people that were thriving as a community that didn't have to worry about anybody. Talk about, about families, Black families that lived and thrived. I didn't learn that at all in school. I'm 39 years old. I learned it when I was 35 about Black Wall Street. Like, where did that come from? How does that get skipped over? But I can talk about, everything leading up to the Civil War, and past that, and the World War I, and then World War II, and then, Civil War. It's just things that you just overlook, and hey, we get lost in that. But I would love to learn that, but spread that out, not on the East Coast or West Coast or the South or the North, Midwest. Because I had a friend who said she went to schools throughout the country because she was traveling with her family. And she said that every time she went to a different place, they learned education differently. And that's weird. What happened to the curriculum that we're also learning from if you're not homeschooled?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Michelle, what were you going to say?
Even in regards to like the statues. So working with someone who was all into history as well, I feel like even though we don't want to see the ugliness, we still need to know about it. Because even the whole statue thing was first coming, I'm like, okay, they're tearing these statues down. And I understand, you know, understanding the history behind them, but what about putting them in museums? What about, you know, just locking them up somewhere else so people still have access to that, because we need to know the good, bad, and the ugly, unfortunately. And I don't think it's something, and just like with, like you said, with Black Wall Street, with all the, it's sometimes it's like we want to bury the ugliness. But like even in this moment now, with where, you know, now there's Black Lives the Matter movement, all these things, the next generations need to know about these things. And as ugly as it is, I don't think, you know, the solution is always, let's just tear it down and forget about it. Like, we have to make sure history doesn't continue to repeat itself. And the only way is by knowing what it is. So I'm very adamant about just educating, just like you said, Sean, too. Here, I'm 36 years old, still learning brand new, fresh things about my own culture. So it's so important, the educational aspect. And I know some of the things are ugly and they hurt, but that doesn't mean we just need to tear it down, burn it away, and never think about it again. We need to make sure we keep it in the forefront so we don't keep repeating these things. Okay. And I mean, that's just, I mean, the education to this moving forward, absolutely. Like some of the things that, I mean, my kids are even learning, some of this, I'm just like, okay, it's the same things that I kind of grew up knowing, you know, your Martin Luther King, you know, your Malcolm, it's like your mainstream characters almost. It's like, when are we going to dig a little bit deeper so they can really have an understanding of, you know, how to grow up and how to, you know, be a part of a decent person in society and not just always have these other little stigmas that were, I mean, it's the same thing. So it's going to be time where we have to get in front of it and say, yes, this is what our country really was. Because we want to hide behind how great it is and everything else. Well, no, we got to touch the other sides too. So I'm with you, Will, when it comes to some of these statues and things like that, and just history in general.
I hear you. When it comes to, like, you mentioned Black Lives Matter. A lot of people I'm seeing are reading either their manifesto or their demands and saying, that's insane, that's not doable, do all Black people want this? Is this indicative of what they're asking for? Are they representative of the opinions of the Black community of America? How do you feel about BLM and their manifesto? William.
I'll be honest, I'll have to go back and read it. I think just saying that alone says that no, they do not represent all Black people. It's in today's world, with the way things going on today, I don't really take offense to be kind of associated with them, but you know, over the years, it was everybody's listening to Al Sharpton, everybody's listening to Jesse Jackson. Like, no, there's no Black leader. Like, there's we're all individuals. We have our own thoughts. Because of systemic racism and actually outward racism, we do have some things in common, some struggles that we have or that our families have had, but we aren't all together under one umbrella. But with that said, I love Black Lives Matter. I love that some people have organized to try to make change, and I love that not just, you know, marching in the streets, they've actually written some things down, you know, because what's the point if you're not asking for something? But I don't know that we're all going to agree to the extent of what they're asking for. But I also know that when people say things are crazy, they're usually looking at it on the surface. The whole idea of Black Lives Matter was crazy. All lives matter, right? So that's usually where the crazy things come from. And we talked about defund the police. Defund the police is crazy, but that's not what they're really talking about. The whole idea is that nobody really wants to read paragraphs and pages to really understand. So it gets summarized. And if somewhere in that summary, it's not completely clear, then you can say it's crazy and write it off. So that's my opinion. I might look at their manifesto and agree that something on there is crazy. It's very possible. But just generally speaking, I know that's usually what happens is, in a way to silence the protest or the noise or whatever, you try to find ways to discredit it so you can move on with your life and ignore it.
Sean, Black Lives Matter for you? How
Yeah,
representative are they?
same thing like Will said. I haven't read the manifesto. So I don't know. I don't know what the movement is in the sense of like their exact details. Like I said, there's no leader, so you need somebody that's going to step in and kind of guide us in the right direction. And I honestly don't like Reverend Al Sharpton. He's just growing up around him and seeing how he leads. He's just a face, a talking head on a Black figure at that in a sense. But I understand their movement and I get what they want and I understand that there needs to be changes, but I'm not gonna fully agree with everything they say because I'm my own individual and I personally don't like being everything just being one big like, oh, believe this or support this or you gotta do this or you gotta do that. So it's a weird, it puts you in a pigeonhole or puts you back into segregation. And I don't like that idea of, hey, you have to do this or support this. If you don't, you're not following us in the right direction. You're not part of the leadership. And it's weird to me to have that, oh, Black Lives Matter. If you don't believe in it, then you're a loser. All lives matter or Blue Lives Matter. I'm human. I just want everybody to be okay. And I get there's injustices, but we still need to say we're all human. And I think that's where I don't believe in, hey, I believe in everything that Black Lives matters because they're not always accurate. I do believe some things that Blue Lives Matter or all lives matter, but to me, everybody's human. So let's just go back to that aspect.
Michelle, Black Lives Matter for you?
Same, I've seen a few things and I'm so now I feel like I do a little bit better when I really want to know, facts. I've seen a lot that they've done and it's amazing. It's an amazing movement. And it's funny because I had this conversation not too long ago about Black Lives Matter, the actual movement, and then Black Lives Matter, the actual saying. Because I feel like some people kind of mix it up. And they feel like, oh, well, if I say, Black Lives Matter, then they're associating me with the movement. And, the things that they're trying to do as far as like in the local aspects and spectrum, because I think that's the biggest part. People don't realize and understand. It really starts within our local communities. So I do like the fact that they are trying to educate. They are trying to localize the community and equip people. Like, we got to know who our officials are. If you really want change, it starts there. So I do like, that the educational aspect. I'm not a fan of the bullying aspect either. There's just some things that, and with any type of movement, I feel like, the politics always get thrown into there. So it's the same thing. It's like, oh, well, there's some things that I like, that I see as, a Republican, or some things that I like to see as a Democrat. And you don't want to just be put in that box. You want to have those individual things and be like, well, no, there's this. But, I support the movement as far as what they're trying to do as, being those voices. It's a lot of people compare them to like the modern day, Black Panthers and things like that, which I don't think it's that far because we all have to take our individual responsibilities. But the fact that they were able to, get something together, make an awareness of something, I definitely can't knock that. But just as long as it continues to build and not continue to divide. And some of the things that I've seen, it's going to have to be broken down on local levels. It can't be just this broad, spectrum. So, I'm all about it. I'm all about, being supportive of my community and movements and things like that, just as long as it's provoking real change and it's just not, a hostage situation and we just have these list of unreasonable demands. So
I think when you look at Black Lives Matter's funding and where the money goes, an enormous amount goes to Democratic candidates, enormous amount. And I want to ask you all, because that ends up really politicizing your movement. And you have people who are like, I believe it, but I don't necessarily want all Democrats running this country. And so can I support BLM? And they're giving all the money to the Democratic side. How does the party system impact, negatively or positively, the things that you're trying to get done? Because I will watch arguments and they almost always fall along party lines. Mm-hmm. And BLM to people on the right absolutely seems like a Democratic organization because it's funding huge amounts of money to Democratic presidential nominees. And out of all of that, we ended up with Joe Biden as a representative of all the diversity on the Democratic side. We got Joe Biden. So there's an enormous amount of money spent, and we end up with Joe Biden. How do you feel about the politicizing of not just BLM, but the movement in terms of effectiveness? Because it really does run into that wall pretty fast. Will?
I personally think that I think politics came to the movement and not the other way around. I mean, granted, Black Lives Matter started when Obama was president, but now, you know, the traction that it's gotten and the support, the wide support from around the world is definitely somewhat related to the man that's in office now. And under him, the way that they have treated issues that specifically affect Black people in this country, where, I mean, he's running a very divisive, I want to say campaign, but I would say presidency. I feel like his entire presidency is a campaign for the next election, and the way he's doing is trying to divide us. And Black Lives Matter happens to be on one side of that divide. So I feel like if we want any kind of change, whether we stick to Black Lives Matter's playbook or not, if we're just talking about we want better race relations, we want people to understand what systemic racism is. We want to talk about implicit bias at work and in restaurants, and we want to deal with police brutality. It seems like everybody that's on the left are kind of on the same page with these things that we're discussing right now. Not saying that nobody on the right is in that camp as well, but it does feel like more people on the right are trying to keep the status quo. They're trying to make some changes to maybe quiet the noise, or they're worried about their elections. I mean, and that's how I feel. It's possible that I might be filtered by the information that I'm getting, and I'm missing that to some extent. But even if it's a little bit, you know, coming from the top, I think it would make sense, at least right now, that anyone that supports Black Lives Matter would be supporting the Democratic Party.
Mm-hmm. Sean, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I see what Will is saying about the support coming from, and then the support started after the movement, is what you said, right, Will? And I think that's accurate, because, like you said, people are going to toe their lines, and if they see, if it's not helping their cause out, because as soon as Black Lives Matter came out, it's happened to be Blue Lives Matter, and then of course Blue Lives Matter is, you just automatically think Democrats hate cops or whatever, so we're going to stick with that, and that big divide just kept happening. It kept separating more and more and more, which is embarrassing, which is sad to me, because I have, you know, a conservative. My wife's family is very conservative, and they don't go around saying all lives matter or blue lives matter or black lives, but there is that line, and it's pushed by an agenda. So you don't know what do you do, in a sense, because if you're getting support, if there's nobody from the, like, I don't see Ted Cruz coming out saying Black Lives Matter. The first thing they're going to say is all lives matter. And then it just made that separated divide right away. Instead of people coming together as unity and saying, okay, you know what, we understand what you mean, and we get it, we need to show support behind it. It was just a quick, okay, let's divide and let's figure out what side you're on. And then, like I said, all the money came from the Democratic Party, because they're like, hey, we need to drum up some more votes as well, because they're playing, Democratic Party are going to do the same thing. They're going to try to get their votes as well. So they're like, what can we do to get our votes, instead of, you know, like, yeah, okay, so the Republicans said, oh yeah, all lives matter. So hey, come to this side, and all Black Lives Matter. But they're doing this, everybody's playing that game to me. It's like, who can we get the most votes from? So right now, the Democratic Party has all the Black Lives Matter movement. They're like, all right, cool, let's take it. It's just always going to be that political game, which is embarrassing to me.
Votes and money. Lots of money, lots and lots and lots of money. Yeah. Michelle, for you in terms of the politics, I know you are in a very conservative adjacent world. Do you feel like conservatives, Republicans want to help, that you hear from people? How do you feel like it splits along party lines?
Oh, I hate politics. People always used to get shocked because I was in it so deep. Man, it's one of those things too. So when I look at politics and look at, you know, conservatives and things like that, because anytime when I'm even thinking conservatism, you know, I'm thinking about even the faith-based aspect, right? Because like I admitted too, like when, I don't even remember what incident was, you know, we were out there marching All Lives Matter because it was like, it started this war. It was like the police and then Black people. And then now, you know, we're shooting the police and we're like, wait a minute, but everybody matters. Not even realizing, like, even within my own culture, well, no, we're shutting a part down. And I feel like with conservatives and the whole, you know, Black Lives Matter, it does make it's like, oh, well, you've crossed that line. So if you believe and you're going to back BLM, then you're obviously backing all of their political point of views. So everything, you know, once politics rears its head, it almost makes what is trying to happen, because I feel like we're all speaking the same language. We know there's a problem. We know there's issues that need to be resolved. We want to unify, but who are you voting for? You know, it's one of these things that it will never, I mean, I would love it to be a nice fix and a point where people can just kind of agree to disagree. But I think people are so hardcore on what they believe and their political stance, especially in the conservative views. You know, if you're doing anything that is, you know, disrespecting their flag and disrespecting this country, you better watch it. We're not going to support that. So I feel like it gets into this political tug of war, and we lose all sight of what the real issues are. And it's unfortunate. And like you said, if people want to know those things, people want to trace and be like, well, where are you getting this money from? And that's with any type of issue or cause. They want to know, well, who's behind these paychecks? I mean, we saw it even within, you know, a lot of the campaign when you started seeing, oh, well, this person funded this, and what are their beliefs? And so it's like, now it's like, well, what do you believe? And then I can kind of gauge how, if not, I'm going to support you. So it's one of those sad things when, you know, the politics come into play with everything. And it really does feel, and honestly, I've seen it firsthand on, you know, comments, people who are posting All Lives Matter or Black Lives Matter, people attacking each other. Oh, you must be, you know, a Republican. You must have voted for Trump. You know, like, it's sad. It's like, you know, it gets to a point where I really feel like we got to get outside of these boxes of these organizations, and it's got to be individual, you know, personal responsibility. Like I'm getting to the point where I'm like, I don't care if you keep saying it's this organization. I need to know the name, their first name, their middle name, their last name, so it's direct with that person, because you can't put me in a bubble. I'm definitely not in a bubble. And I feel like that's what it's got to almost break down and come to. But there are people that like to hide behind, you know, their organizations or their political stances, and they probably don't even believe 75%, who knows? But it's just, yeah, politics always rears its head in any type of cause, unfortunately. And that's where I feel like the divide really even happens more.
And that happened, I mean, Michelle, that happened. Remember, we were the first team to go down there after the South Carolina shooting, the church shooting. And we went down with our old boss, GB. And as soon as it happened, Glenn's like, we're getting on a plane, we're going to go down there, we're going to show support. And it wasn't because he was a Republican, he wants to go down there. It was because, you know, 9 or 12 people died in the church because of, you know, the racist guy. And there was nothing political behind it. It was just like, okay, let's go out there and show support because something horrible happened to people. And we went out there, and it was a great time to go there. We went out there, we showed support, and we documented everything. But then, of course, then it started changing once the media got a hold of it. And it was like, oh, look, this Republican conservative guy that hates America killed these Black people in the church. And it's like, that's not where it went. We didn't go out there because of that. We went out, Glenn was the first one who said, let's get on a plane, let's go down there, let's do whatever we can do to show support and help out. And of course, again, like I said, once politics got a hold of it, it was like, oh, look, this racist white guy from this conservative family with Confederate flags. It's like, hold up, that's not, why did it go to that? It was just an evil guy. And let's talk about the guy being evil. It's not about him being Black, white, conservative, Confederate flag. It's an evil person. And Glenn went out there, and he's a conservative guy, but he went out there to show support. And we were all there. We documented what we can. We went out there. We prayed with the families. Show the human side again. I mean, everything I talk about is always about being human. You know, I just watched that I'm Not Your Negro, but James Baldwin, he said the same thing. He said, instead of looking at me as a nigger, look at me as a human being. We're never going to get past a certain point until you start looking at me as a human. And we're going to keep going back and forth, this conflict, because there has to be a divide instead of everybody just being human.
I disagree a little bit with just the idea of not bringing up the background of Dylan Roth. He specifically went to that church because of the history. His I believe it's, I don't know if it's Facebook, but his social media post shows that he was interested in a race war. I mean, this is who that kid was. And unfortunately, we as Black people are not on even ground yet. So I feel like we do need to point out that these people still exist. We need to point out that this is still happening. And I don't know when that was, but I mean, 2020. These things are still happening. So I disagree with just ignoring that fact of who he was in terms of what he did. But I agree wholeheartedly with you going out there really to be there for the people. Like, you're not out there for that reason. Somebody should be talking about that. But you should be able to go out there and have nothing to do with that, whether you're there with Glenn Beck or not. I was actually going to mention Governor Hogan in Maryland. You know, Governor Hogan, I feel like he's done an amazing job through the pandemic and just through plenty of other things. And I know you guys are in Texas, but Baltimore, probably the most well-known city in Maryland, is definitely known as a Black city. Mm-hmm. PG County, I believe, is the wealthiest. I think it's the wealthiest African-American county in the country. Don't quote me on that, but it's definitely up there. But we've got a Republican governor, and for the most part, people love him. Like, he's doing a great job. So I think there are examples. I don't think it trickles down. I don't think the politics trickle down to everyone in terms of who they're going to get behind. I think people really do want to think about what they need, what they're looking for, and if this person that they're trying to elect is the best person to give that to them. But as you go up the ladder, and people do have their agendas, and they are trying to win elections more than they are trying to really do the job, then that's what we see. Like, that's what we see on the news. That's what we see when they're giving speeches, and that's very unfortunate. But I don't want to lose sight of the fact that it's just like all police aren't bad, all Black men aren't bad, all Republican politicians aren't bad, all Democratic politicians aren't bad. There's definitely some people that are really out there, and if you can see their heart, no matter which side of the fence you're on, you should give them your support.
Mm-hmm. The campaigning from day one, as opposed to doing the job. It's breaking my heart that we have coronavirus and the economy is shattered, and hundreds of millions are being donated for political ads. I mean, hundreds of millions. People don't have homes. They don't have food. We could solve so much. We could put it in a billion things, hundreds of millions of dollars, and it's going to go for media buys of ads for a campaign that's going to come down to a few percentage points anyway. It's just the money, the amount of money you have to fundraise. I was living in DC, and I had a dinner with a very, very prominent lobbyist, and I asked her on the record, does an angry population make you more money? And I asked her, A, yes, B, no, C, it's more complicated than that. I want to know on the record. And her answer was absolutely A. Absolutely A. I make much more money. Candidates make much more money. Campaigns make much more money. And viewership of cable news goes up when people are angry. The whole system is designed for everyone to see the differences, not the common ground. I want to talk to you a bit about anti-racism, because it's a new term to be anti-racist. And people are getting confused as to what it is, what it means. Is it important to you as a term, a new term coming out, someone being anti-racist? What does that mean to you? Because now the belief is it's no good to just be supportive. You have to be actively anti-racist. And that can be provocative to people, that you're either with us or you're against us. How do you feel about that term, anti-racist, and what do you think its importance is for people who are not Black?
I don't think there should be a term to be anti-racist. Don't be a racist. There's no need to be anti against it. Like, if you are racist, then you're racist. If you're not a racist, then to me, you're not a racist. I don't go around looking and say, are you anti-racist? Let me know, because that's not, if you're a racist, I'm going to eventually find that out or figure it out. But I don't need you to tell me that. I don't need to ask people if they're anti-racist.
William, you?
I agree to a certain extent, but I would answer C. It's more complicated than that.
I didn't give you those options. You don't get to reach back to the story and grab
Yeah,
something.
I
from
feel
the
like,
story.
I mean, so my background is in psychology. My company does psychological work. So, the touchy-feely terms, I can kind of get behind them probably a little bit more than Sean. So it's all good. But I do feel like, again, like I said, the short ways that we can define things so that they can be explained and repeated by other people, the better. So yeah, if anti-racist is going around, then that's great. You can call it whatever you want. For me, what's important is, one, yes, you're not a racist. That's great. But that means that there are people that are not racist, but are also not anti-racist, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like right now, if someone is not anti-racist, they're getting shamed. And I don't necessarily agree with that. Like, I love the support that we're seeing now. I think it's necessary for us to make change, but I don't think it's mandatory. I think some people should have a right to say, look, I don't agree with this, but I personally am not affected. And, I've got a job that I'm working 60 hours. I've got 5 kids, I've got a sick mother. I'm just not paying attention. I don't want to have anything to do with this. And I feel like that's their right. I don't see anything wrong with somebody not being involved. The only time it bothers me is when people aren't paying attention, but then they do want to get involved when they see appropriate, and they're ignorant to some of the issues or the truth, and they want to step back on learning more, but they still want to be in the middle, because I think that makes it cloudy, because we all affect whoever we talk to. Everyone's having conversations. I can say I read 1 million books, but my opinion on even what's in those books are going to be skewed by who I had conversations with, whether they agree, disagree, explain it a different way. So for someone to be an anti-racist is basically saying that they are an ally. It's basically saying that they are going to work to understand, they are going to speak up in these situations. That's great. I'm glad you're wearing our wristband. Like, I know I can depend on you, but I don't have a problem with people that don't want to do that, or people that don't want to be that involved either.
Great. Michelle, any thoughts on that?
So this anti-racist is a new term for me. Like, like I said, I completely disconnected. So to understand, if you're anti-racist, you're just saying you're against racism.
You're actively working. You're actively an ally to help being awareness to racist moments, to out racist moments, to understand. You're an active ally to fight racism along with the Black community, is what I believe anti-racism is being defined as.
Got it. Okay. I mean, I'm kind of in line with Will. Like, again, these are those personal, individual choices that, yeah, if you feel, it goes back to like the action things. It's almost like, well, if I'm not vocal enough, or if I don't go march, or if I don't say anything, so are you putting me now in the racist category? Or no, I agree. I don't believe in racism. So now I'm tagged, well, okay, good, you're anti-racist. But then you just have people that have no clue, kind of like, Will said. So it's one of those things, definitions are so, I mean, they can be both good and bad. And I feel like it's even kind of the conversation that I had with one of my kids one day, when they were mixing racism and discrimination kind of which is, it's still all the same, but it's like, how many more things do we need to define to know what's good and what's bad? So like adding more titles, I mean, if that helps a cause, then great, I'm all for it. But pro this, anti that, I mean, is it really serving a purpose for the better? I mean, if it is, then great, I'm anti whatever. I just want to make sure when I walk out the door, or my child walks out the door, they're not just getting judged because of their color of their skin anymore. So I mean, that's what I'm for. So whatever that puts me anti or pro, I'm all about it. But I don't feel like we keep needing to add more definitions and things like that to, you got to wear your pin to know where you stand. It's going to be based on your actions at the end of the day anyway. So something. I just learned that today. So thank you for that.
You've had a son graduate. Get ready for boot camp. Head off to boot camp. Like, you've had a very intense few weeks. Let me ask you, sort of the last topic is, I find the trickiest thing about this movement, and I would say it was similar with the gay rights movement, similar with talking to people about immigration and Muslims, is that you kind of, as a minority, are asking a majority whose life is not necessarily impacted to care. You're asking a majority to care about something that they may not have an active day-to-day experience with. And it's a tricky thing to do. Let me ask each of you, why should someone care? And what I'm trying to get at is, there's so many things that are thrown at us from the news and the media that make people want to get off the train. Oh, if they're going to tear down that statue, I'm off. Oh, if they're going to loot and riot, I'm off. If they're gonna say anything anti about Trump, I'm off. And all of those are valid. You can certainly have your opinions, but why do people need to not get derailed by the specifics of this small group or this small group or this small group? Why is it important for them to care now? That's something that I think is really hard to express to people whose life is not impacted. And I have a lot of appreciation for so many people who reach out to me to say, it doesn't impact my life, but I still want to help. Why is it important now to not get derailed by the crazy extremists, or even a point of view you don't like, and to focus on what's being achieved? Each of you, let me start with you, Michelle. Why do you think it's important now for the majority to care?
Something I told one of my friends, I said, you may not understand. One, they're not ever going to understand. They're not Black. But just as a human being, as another person, as another citizen in this world that is experiencing hurt, pain, injustice, we like to make America this, amazing country that has, so much to offer, and the freedoms. Well, at the end of the day, I'm another American citizen too. If we could take away the pigmentation, I'm a person, my son's a person, my father, my brothers, they're experiencing something that's an injustice. Let's just stand for what that is. Like, it's so, like this, I'm more fearful for what this next generation is about to experience. Because the reality is, this just doesn't go away. And maybe, I guess we see so many families that are, biracial, interracial, all these things, and you would just think, oh, we don't even, like, it's gonna go away, but clearly it hasn't. So it's almost one of those things where I feel like it's important because it affects, if you're saying I'm American, we're all together, then it should affect you. It should affect your fellow brother, your fellow sister that's going through something. Because clearly we're making noise about it. The communities are changing, things are shifting. So people can't just stay as much as we want to stay in our bubbles, our protected bubbles, and just turn away from it. And well, yeah, it doesn't affect me. To me, somehow in way, it will eventually, whether it's coming in straight into your neighborhoods, into your job forces, whatever the case may be. We can't just turn our backs when we say we're, this amazing country, and that we're all one, because it just doesn't seem that way. So it's got to be an eye-opening experience to everyone, just for our next generation, their kids, their grandkids, and things like that. it's a long road ahead, but I feel like if we're all saying we're one, then you can't turn a blind eye to it. You have to help your other brother, your fellow brother.
Sean?
Yeah, that's the same thing Michelle said with I think you can't take a step back because injustices are still happening. For the things that are happening right now, and everybody says, well, the same thing happens to white people, or it's. I think we should take a step back, pause for a second, and to see that there is a problem, and there needs to be something done about it. So instead of coming out and saying, hey, I'm just going to turn my eye to it, or I'm just going to pick a side, take a step back and say to yourself, wait, what's happening? I just watched a video. I don't know where it happened. I think it was Atlanta, Georgia, where the guy, he's walking out the store. He said he went to Western Union, and the guy came up behind him and tackled him and broke his ribs. And they said, oh, yeah, it's the wrong guy. And it's just like, that shouldn't be happening. So there is an injustice. There is police brutality, police authority that's over excessive. Stop for a second. I get the thin blue line. I get that you pick a side, but take a second and say, hey, let me turn off Fox News for a second and see what's happening. Let me turn off CNN for a second and see what's happening and see where there is actual injustice and say, okay, I'm not picking a side on left, right, or whatever. I'm going to pick a side of where the injustice is. That's something that I should keep my eye on instead of turning it off. And that's what same thing like Michelle said, like there is something that's happening. So you have to keep your eye on that. You can't just turn a blind eye to it or it'll get lost in history, like the way we didn't get taught about, Black Wall Street or the riots in East St. Louis. Like it'll be lost. So you're like, wait, what happened? How many people died? What happened? Where did this go? So you have to stop and say, hey, what's happening right now? Let me see what it is and let me keep an eye on that. Because you are going to shape history, like Michelle said. The next generation is shaping the history. So what are we going to do to shape it for them? Are we just going to be lost again where it's like, oh yeah, what happened in 2020? That was, a bunch of people got killed and, a couple of riots. But yeah, you'll see that in a history book sometime down the line and you get lost.
It's interesting you're talking about history, and I'm thinking when Michelle mentioned everyone knows Martin Luther King, and I'm like, but no one knows that he was on the FBI's most wanted list and that he was hunted by federal authorities for being a real threat to the United States. Again, fact, no one knows that. That's part of the history that I think gets lost. And so a lot of times people are like, what's the problem? Because they don't know the specifics of how long the incidents, the Wall Street, the Martin Luther King, like all those things. Will, for you, why do you encourage people to keep caring when they're given so many opportunities to just be offended and leave? What is your plea to get them to care, to continue to care?
Well, because I think it does affect them. Maybe not directly, maybe not immediately, but we're all connected. We're completely fine giving our tax dollars to give millions, if not billions of dollars to other countries to make sure that I hate to say it considering COVID, but so we don't end up with the next pandemic. The reason we do it is because we know if that happens, it can reach us. Mm-hmm. But here we have this virus that's been brewing here at home that we want to completely ignore. If you think about our economy, if you think about jobs, if you think about education, all of these things that Blacks have been struggling with throughout history have affected the entire country. If you educate everyone to a higher level, then everyone will be more successful. Our economy will be more successful. Our housing market will be more successful. And just in general, people are afraid of the unknown. So good or bad, whatever information there is, if everybody understood everything that happened to every group in this country without any whitewashing, without trying to make it sound better than it actually was, then when you're walking down the street next to someone, you're not worried about what they may do. When you're watching the news and you see a Black person committed a crime, you're not assuming that that's all Black people, and now you're scared that your kid might come across them. Like I feel like if we did all get to the even playing field that some are being convinced to believe that we are already at and have been for years, then we all look at each other the same way. And that's not even a good or a bad thing. Not all of us are good, but not all of us are bad. And we just judge people individually, which is what everybody claims they want to do.
It's I get asked a lot when I say that there are things I want to change about America, if I think America is a good country. And I'm always like, yes, but there are major issues. I think a lot of people hear dissent as anti-American, that America's great. And America has a lot that's great. Just comment, if you could, about that how you feel about America, because I am getting a lot of that. It feels very anti-American. It feels very, how can you, if you don't believe this is such a great country. Sean, when you hear that, when you hear someone feeling like America is great, and I don't mean the political slogan, I mean that America as a nation is a great, great country. How do you feel when someone says that? Do you agree to the most part? Do you feel like for you it's not been, how do you feel?
I think I always say I think America is great. My family came here from Jamaica to get a better life. They came here, they had me here in America for that better life. They came from a third world country, grew up on a farm, grew up with nothing to some extent, some of my family members, and they came to America for that better life. So yes, there's things that are not perfect, but that's a growing nation. At the end of the day, we still are a young nation, and I'm happy that I'm here because I can marry whoever I want to marry. I can do whatever I want to do. I'm not in a bubble. I don't have a communist rule, totalitarian rule.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I love what America is. Yes, there's going to be issues. Again, that political divide is what's making us even stronger. Because I think politics is a lot heavier now than it was in the past. But I still think America is great. There are things that need to be changed. Of course there is. But where else can you really live? I mean, Nina Simone, James Baldwin, they all went to France to live for a little bit. They just but they grew up in segregated America. And they just said, hey, America was horrible, let me leave. And they had the opportunity to do it because they were wealthy to some extent and they got out. But right now, where I'm in this day and age, I wouldn't go anywhere else unless I could own my own island. But that's not happening right now. But not yet. But I love America. I think the opportunities that it provides for a lot of people and people that still come over here for that reason, because you can get good opportunities. So I would never say that America is bad.
Okay. Michelle?
I can agree too with Sean. It everywhere has its bad things, overall, and kind of the same experience. My mom, she's from West Africa, Liberia. My family came out here. There was a civil war in Liberia. We were able to bring in my grandmother and the rest of their family. So, and the amazing opportunities that they've had to start businesses and start over and all those things, that does make, our country great. It does make our country great that we have, freedoms and things that you see, these other countries don't have. And I mean, even, the constitutional rights that we're doing right now, whether it's going out to protest and things like that, we have, those opportunities. And there's not going to be a perfect world. And unfortunately, there was, that time in history where the segregation and everything else. And thank God we're where we are, but yes, there's a lot more room to grow from it. So I would never say, I'm proud to be an American citizen. I'm, proud of the things and opportunities that we do have. But there's always always going to be areas for room for improvement. So as far as, non-political slogan, America's great. Yes, I'm about that.
William?
I was going to piggyback on something else, but I will piggyback on your non-political slogan, because the actual slogan is "Make America Great Again."
True.
And the problem with that slogan is that I know people say, when was America great? And we can point to all examples, but I remember the first time I heard it, I thought, America's great now. Like, what are you talking about? Like, we don't need to make America great again. America's great now. And in terms of everything that's going on, I mean, seems like the world's burning down, but the reality is this is America. This is America. America was basically founded on a protest. Like, this is what we do. This is how they envisioned it. This is why we have terms. This is why we have the different offices that we have. This is why we have the state rights that we have. Like, we are exercising our rights as Americans. And honestly, I feel like anyone who says that this is being anti-American or unpatriotic is either ignorant to the fact of what that really means, or has an agenda that they're trying to push to get somebody on the other side of the people that are trying to make change.
Okay. Thank you all. I think
This is.
anything else? Anything else from anyone that you wanted to say? William, did you want to piggyback on something else from before?
No, I was just continuing with what Michelle was saying before.
Okay. I mean, I think it's a very interesting time, and I think there seems to be support from non-traditional allies. And at least in these conversations, I'm seeing, even in the aftermath of these conversations, in the chat rooms that you all are in, a lot of change, a lot of constantly, what about this? What do you think about this? Have you seen this? Because they're taking advantage of the connection and the bridge to the information that they don't normally have access to. So thank you all for taking the time. I know it's a funny topic, what do Black people want? Like, you're all one people, but it really was to say, this is gonna be a conversation, because I think there's a lot good that can come out of this. And I don't want the detractors to take away and thwart what could be a really powerful transitional moment that this country needs. So I wanted to hear from you guys directly, just three ordinary people, what you thought, not people selling a book or running for office or trying to get elected or raise $1 million in this, during this luncheon, but just what you actually thought. So thank you as always, and that's it. I wish you all a good day. And thank you guys for your trust.
Absolutely. Nice meeting you guys.
Nice meeting you too, Will.
Bye, guys.
Bye.